friends of the ISB. It's always an honor to be a part of the ISB convention, to be at any ISB convention, and it's particularly nerve-wracking for me to be presenting. So I hope this presentation is of use to you. The techniques I'm going to discuss coming from many decades of experience as a tango player, and in particular with the music of Astor Piazzolla. I know that many of you around the world have been encountering Piazzolla's music perhaps for the first time through his popularity in orchestral programming and in chamber music series. His music has really expanded a lot since his death in 1992. In my development of my technique as a tango player and as a player of Piazzolla's music, I've also stretched the music into the jazz realm and used some of these techniques for improvisation. So I hope it's also of use to you who are involved in creative music and jazz. I wanted to start with an iconic bass line. You know, one of the advantages we have as bass players with Piazzolla's music is that he liked to write ostinatos, and one of the most iconic ostinatos is a piece called Buenos Aires, Hora Cero, which you'll find many performances of in the repertoire, and particularly in YouTube. If you can zero in on a performance of his sextet at the BBC, you will see Piazzolla's bass player Hector Console playing this bass line forever in the piece. And I wanted to use it to illustrate some of the most basic techniques in tango playing. So it's an F sharp minor, it's just a walking bass, and it goes like this. Simple enough. He builds a wonderful mood over this. Buenos Aires Hora Cero means midnight at Buenos Aires. And I wanted to actually pull this whole 4-beat measure apart and to show you these techniques. First of all, because, it seems to me that everything is represented in this bass line. So let's start with the downbeat. The downbeat uses what we call in tango an arrastre. And we can get to the arrastre both from the right hand and from the left hand. And we're going to look first at the arrastre on the right hand. You may notice that I'm starting sort of with a crooked bow, and that the motion is of this sort of going away from the palm of my hand. And this takes a minute to coordinate, and I've seen it described by the great Ignacio Warchowski in his book, The Bass in Tango, as being of the index going in and the other fingers going out. And there's also motion in the thumb. I've heard it described as lighting a match. And also there's this wrist motion that could be like bouncing a ball. So all of that with some arm creates this friction and not a clean attack, but it gives it an envelope. And this can be more or less. In the video I reference of Hector Console at the BBC with Piazzolla, he uses quite a bit of arm for this downbeat. So you start the note and you don't really attack it until that motion from the fingers. Okay, so that's the arrastre of the right hand. That can be coupled with a left hand arrastre that can be either a half step or a whole step. And you don't really want to attack the note until you get to the note. So 2, 3, 4, 1. One motion. Okay? And you can finger it. Okay? So that's the arrastre. We'll get back to it because we find it in many different ways in tango, and we find it in Piazzolla's music. The second beat is just on the string, and it's the same motion, just no arrastre. Okay, so again, there is it's sort of like a motion from the index finger. There's an extension of the fingers, and there's an extension of the thumb. Everything your teacher told you not to do. to regulate the length of the note also with the left hand. So if we want sustain, or if we want a shorter note, we lift. We lift, or we leave it down. So all of the sustain comes from the left hand. We just want a nice sharp attack. We're basically the bass and the bass drum in this music. There's no drums, and we're really the pulse of this music comes from the bass and the left hand of the piano. So we get this sustain from the left hand as opposed to the length of the note from. This is going to be too heavy, particularly in the bass section. So you want to get just the sound. And there's this motion here. I feel the bow coming back to my hand, and it takes a little bit. There's an exercise that Ignacio proposes, which is to shift the three fingers and the index. And if you get a hold of that book, which I will link to, he has a very good description of this motion. I can't say for myself that this is the way I learned it, but Ignacio's work with some of the great masters, older masters of the bass in tango, yielded this very succinct explanation that for many of you French bow players will make sense. I came to tango from German bow techniques, which I will discuss in a few minutes. So I just kind of went at it intuitively, just from hearing the sound. But there is a way to practice this motion. I would suggest that you focus on the finger movement, and then maybe add some wrist, and eventually a little bit of arm. But again, it's just an attack. It's almost like a pits in bow terms, if I may. Okay, so we'll come back to that. So we've done the first beat with the arrastre, second beat on the string, and the third beat is accented from off the string. So the background for this is that you have to feel tango in two. So when you have a measure of 4 quarter notes, you want to have the accent in beats 1 and 3. Think of it in terms of what this music is for dancing. Dancers don't step 1, 2, 3, 4. They step 1, 2, and 1. So the music is in 2. And anytime you play tango, even you may be going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. You want to feel it 1 and 2, and that will sort of ground the music. Remember, you are the bass drum. You're really the pulse of this music. So you have to carry it in a way that doesn't rush and it doesn't feel rushed, particularly when you have people dancing, which in Piazzolla's music, granted, you don't, but Piazzolla's music is grounded and rooted in tango. So we are in 2. So this accent in 3 is very important. Okay? And it's the same motion, it just comes from above. And it takes coordination. Every string presents a different challenge because of the thickness of the string, of the angle with our arm. So but see, in this case, I'm coordinating the actual point of contact of the bow with the movement in my hand. And beat 4 is just short, and you have to prepare the next beat 1, which will take quite a bit on both hands to do the arrastre. So beat 4 is really very short. Also from off the string in the case of this particular bass line. So we want to practice, first of all, the arrastre from the bow. Notice how at the end of the arrastre is my motion with the fingers. So you can start the note with any degree of dirt, and then And then beat 2, like I said, is on the string. Beat 3 is from the air, as we call it in tango, de arriba, from above. And beat 4, you can use as a preparation. Okay, so one of the common things to do is when you attack is to actually give an attack, and you want to make sure that you don't really attack the note until down. It's not a double attack, although in certain bass lines you want to use that. But so we're using this bass line to get into the subject of the kind of sound that we're producing in tango and for Piazzolla's music. Remember, we're not getting the sound in a traditional orchestral way by drawing all the length of the note, but we're definitely using the left hand for sustain. So let's talk a little bit more about the left hand arrastre. So, of course, you want to calculate what finger you're using, and it's the same envelope as what you're doing with the bow. There are other arrastres in tango that in general you want to start slower and then you want to speed them up. That takes a whole beat. Okay, let's talk about some more arrastres and type of arrastres on the left hand. You will find in Piazzolla's music this 4-note pickup. You'll find it in slow pieces and you'll find it in fast pieces. And again, since you are the drummer essentially, you want to articulate this very, very carefully and rhythmically. Either with the 4/16 notes or with the 2/16 notes, we're working on, as we will see later in the bass line from Michelangelo 70. Again, you can coordinate it with the arrastre and the bow. So let's apply some of these techniques to another typical bass ostinato in Piazzolla that alternates into a tonic minor chord and its dominant chord. Basically, we're in A minor, alternating with E7. So I'm perhaps using a little less arrastre on 1 and I'm using it on 2 for this effect. When the harmony changes, that has. So it's an arrastre onto the second beat. I'm definitely emphasizing the third, giving it that accent from off the string. And of course I'm playing around a little bit more with the bass line. I'm using the arrastre onto. I'm also using purposely a syncopated accent. I'm accenting and then backing off the note so I get the attack again. There's the 4/16 note pickup with actually an 8th note before that. And you can also also use this sort of flick of the fingers to emphasize. Okay, so I hope we have the patience to work on this particular technique. I think it's interesting to start thinking about how you can apply this with other quarter notes, as in other types of walking bass that are not as tango oriented. Let me give you some examples. If you start thinking of it in 12/8, you can almost swing this. Let's look at another bass line from Piazzolla's repertoire. I'm referring to Michelangelo's 70. It's a very fast piece he wrote later on in his career, when he started sort of picking up the pulse of his music into the 70s. He was very aware of musical tendencies, and I think this Michelangelo 70 is sort of a way of his music coming to terms with what was happening with music in general. Electric instruments and just a lot more fervor than the music of the 50s and 60s, which is when he starts writing music. So Michelangelo 70 is also in F sharp minor. Again. And notice how when it starts going around the circle of fifths, you can add a little bit of that arrastre on the bow. It's happening very fast, and it's maybe cumbersome to add it on the left hand, but you can still have an arrastre. So, okay, in Adios Nonino, we get the arrastre, and then we get one of these wonderful bass techniques of hitting the bass. I'm going to suggest to you that when you hit the bass, you hit it just with the heel and not full. And of course, you be careful. But I've never broken a bass in over 35 years of playing tango, so don't worry about that part. Okay, so in Adios Nonino you get 2, 3, 4. Okay, so coordination, nothing that we haven't worked on other aspects of your playing. It's so, again, if you have time, but you don't, so you may want to do the arrastre just with your right hand. Okay? There's many ways to get to this. I've seen players do that, where you can coordinate, still drawing the bow while you're going to the back to hit. That's in the first couple of bars of Adios Nonino, and it may be in the orchestral arrangement that some of you play. I don't know that. Okay, so we've gotten to the arrastre, we've gotten to the arrastre on both hands, and we've gotten to these accents. Let's talk about some of the special effects. We encounter this, and also in Piazzolla we encounter, from traditional tango, the so-called strappata, which is a triplet, and then the back of the bass. Just the tip of the bow. Okay, so it's the same as the same effect in the back, and the notation will be with just crosses, and maybe it'll say strappata. Okay, I promised that I would address German bow. I actually, when I started playing tango seriously, went from German to French. I'm not suggesting you do that, but in your experimenting, I don't have a German bow with me. Check out the middle of the bow as opposed to the frog as we do. It seems to me, and from experience playing some gypsy music and watching Hungarian bass players, that it has to do a lot with that way of playing with the shardas, and that it's in the middle of the bow that you're going to get that grit, not here but here. But experiment with that motion so that you get the same dirt in that twist. Again, it's going to feel a little bit unnatural because you've been training to be perpendicular to the string, and when you go off the string, perhaps it's not to hit the string, but to produce a much more harmonious sound. But we're not talking about necessarily a harmonious music. There's grit. There's definitely what we call in tango mugre. That is part of the sound. It's part of the appeal of it, if anything. So if you're a German bow player, please don't be discouraged by the fact that we're all playing French for this technique. I think in either bow, it has to do with how you use your arm to articulate these strokes. No? There's a lot of sound that happens just in the fingers, but of course we know that that's not necessarily all the truth. Sometimes I feel the muscles here on the side and the back. You can't really get a whole lot of sound to drive a band from just the fingers, but it is in a way where your focus should be to try to get the technique. Everything else, and this curious motion of the bow going out and back, I'm not really sure what the equivalent is. I guess the bow doesn't really leave your hand when you're playing German bow. Okay, let me address the pits. Traditionally, tango pits is an orchestral pits, and it's done with the bow in hand as such, and so it's more about the tip of the finger. And again, in Ignacio Warchowski's Bass in Tango book, he talks about this motion of sort of hitting the air. In Piazzolla, you can put the bow down, I wanted to discuss. You definitely don't want to use a jazz pitch, but you can experiment with getting more sound. One thing that I wanted to address is in playing some of his iconic bass lines in the slow milongas, in the slow pieces like Milonga del Ángel or Soledad, is the accentuation of these lines. So we have a line. Again, not this. That's too much sound perhaps for the music. It's really almost a Baroque feel to it, or a neoclassical Baroque feel to it. So we do want to be a little drier. But notice how the pattern, it's not like a bolero. You really want to emphasize the end of two to get that syncopation that comes from some of the basic rhythms of tango, like the milonga. For me, I like to have a running 8-note grid in my mind. And really take my time to get to each beat. Okay, sometimes I hear people just doing a little bit too much, going to what I would consider a bolero, and I think that the juice of this rhythm is to emphasize that syncopation. Perhaps 1 could be more sustained, and even 4. Piazzolla uses these ostinatos to build some beautiful long lines, so you really need to have some shape to what you do with your bass line as well. Another set of ideas have to do when you get to play an actual 3-3-2, like a quarter note, quarter note, quarter, such as in Liber Tango. And I like to use some techniques having to do with ghosting notes, like let's say. I use some of that. The arrastre, and never lose sight that you're playing bam, 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 bam. Even when you're playing bam, 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 or even faster. You're really playing that rhythm. Again, the accent on that syncopation helps. The arrastre. You can fill this with 8 notes. Ghosted. There's many notes in tango that are just ghosts. We don't aim to emphasize every single note and to make every single note pretty, and you know, so there's a lot of ghost notes, and you should definitely experiment with that as well. Bien. And the last thing I wanted to address is passages in 8 notes, also to give you a sense of how much of this is dependent on these down bows. So I was thinking of the line in Fuga y Misterio. Okay, so So a lot of these ghost notes and double down bows. So experiment with those bowings when you encounter a passage. Also, Muerte del Ángel. Okay? Like, it's almost like the second note is. I'm starting from off the string, or even from on the string. And the second one, I'm just pulling off or hammering on. Okay, so again, it's music that is derived from popular music, where the emphasis perhaps is not on every single note like you may get in classical music. You may be striving for every note to have its own shape. Sometimes you have to toss off certain notes to keep a certain rhythmic sense and a certain sense of the line. Don't be afraid to experiment with that as well. Okay, so I hope you found some of these descriptions and explanations useful, that you enjoy exploring tango and the music of Piazzolla, and that you're able to use this in your creative playing as well. I look forward to meeting with you in my Zoom slot here at the ISB convention. Of course, you can reach out to me if you want to take some lessons or have conversations about this. Of course, you can hire me for just about anything that you can imagine having to do with Piazzolla and the bass. And I look forward to meeting you all, and let me know what you think. I want to leave you with some bonus material, of course. I'm going to attach some of the things that I referenced in my talk, like my Verano Porteño, and I found a clip of exactly one measure of Hector Console playing the ostinato from Buenos Aires Arrastre. So I'm going to loop that for you so you can get a sense of how beautiful the stroke is in the hands of that master. And I'm going to leave you with an improvisation on some of these Piazzolla concepts and bass lines. From Buenos Aires, I'm Pablo Aslan, and thank you.
because it's time for us to bring Mr. Astor Piazzolla into this concert. And in his beloved New York City, we want to pay tribute to him by playing his Verano Porteño.